Do you ever feel like Google is gaslighting you? That it's not honoring commitments it made to you in the past? That it's keeping secrets, lying, manipulating, yet you get blamed for its bad behavior? That it's constantly distracting us with algorithm update after algorithm update to a traditional search, yet it's paying all of its attention to its side hustles? That it's sitting there and telling you, you're my number one. But in reality, it's always going to put its own needs above yours. And now it's swaggered in and announced that it's in its Gemini era. You're like, well, what does this mean for our relationship? But the reality is, when you're optimizing only for search, you're not in a relationship. You're in a situationship. And the only guarantee in such a situation is you are going to get fucked. Because you're not fulfilling all of Google's needs. If you want them to put you at the top of all of their lists, to be their number one, you have to give them what they really want. Now, Google's always said the exact same thing. Provide me high quality content in a way that I can understand it. But how they understand that content has significantly shifted thanks to Google Gemini. So the base foundation remains constant. They're looking at text and key HTML tags, things like the page title and the H1 and images and videos and structured data. But we know from the antitrust trials that when Google says, oh, we understand all of these elements, they kind of lied to us. They were kind of faking it for a very long time. And that faking it led to an over-reliance on structured data. And there's a challenge with structured data because it can only describe a limited amount of the content because it can only use its predefined parameters. And these are often either unsuitable or they're just inadequate. So if we take a look at an article page, for example, I can really only describe the elements that are already quite clear from the HTML. I can mark up the category, the title, the date, the featured image. But when it comes to actually describing the content of the article, I have two options. I have about and mentions property. And the only thing I can put in there is the entity. This is woefully simplistic for describing the content of an article. Now, when we think of actual products, again, we can mark up certain elements. We can mark up the title, the reviews, the price, the brand, the color. But how do you clearly communicate to Google that these are inline microphones, that these are noise-canceling headphones? You know, the actually important attributes of the product that are going to allow the human to make a purchase decision. And all of this can only be done with a very complicated, convoluted set of markup. I have to describe that this product is on offer and it's got these aggregate ratings based on these reviews. Now, I'm not standing up here saying that schema doesn't have value. It most certainly does. When you use it as a graph, it is a very effective way to disambiguate relationships. So this is how you can clearly communicate that this product on this web page is part of this website, which belongs to this organization. This is absolutely essential for establishing brand-level EEAT signals and establishing your entity in the Google Knowledge Graph. Also, structured data right now is essential if you want to win certain featured snippets or rich results or get visibility on verticalized surfaces. But I was convinced by Tom Anthony's ramblings in his Whiteboard Friday that structured data has an end in sight. That at some point, this is no longer going to be necessary because the AI models that look at structured data we're really using it for supervised learning. But we've moved beyond supervised learning to a world of unsupervised learning with Gemini. And unsupervised learning provides a significantly deeper understanding of context. And to explain the depth of this change, the seismic shift, we can look at a couple of numbers. So structured data, it can describe around 1,400 different types of entities. If we look at a mid-sized large language model like Gemini, that has approximately 175 billion parameters. Now, I understand here I'm not comparing apples to apples, but this is indicative of the difference in understanding between the old models that assessed your content and the Gemini models that are beginning to dominate the Google ecosystems. On top of this, being a GPT-based natively multimodal model, this is not only giving a significantly deeper understanding of text, this is also applying to images, videos, audio, and code. And this deeper understanding of all of these elements is allowing Google to extract entities, to look at the attributes of those entities and infer relationships between those entities, providing a whole new context that they could not possibly understand pre-Gemini. And you may be thinking, well, this is all very technically interesting, but why as an SEO do I care? It's because this significant increase in understanding changes user behavior and changes our surfaces that the users are going to be leveraging. Say I want to rent a furnished 2-bedroom apartment, I want a view of the beach, I have it to allow pets, and it should all be available for under $1,000 in Sydney's eastern suburbs. For 25 years, I have been trained to remove the majority of that explicit context and type it into a tiny little keyword. So I'm going to type, 2-bedroom apartment for rent Bondi. And then that's going to show a list of results, which are, let's face it, category pages. I'm going to click onto a few of those category pages. I'm going to be applying filters there for what I was actually wanting to search for. And after doing all of that work, I'm going to get 3 results. And this is not because the content doesn't exist. It's because these websites are too lazy to bother correctly categorizing their products in depth. And this is friction. And this is frustration. And this is something that Gemini will solve. Because it is retraining users how to search. It's saying, give me your full context, all of that query. Tell me the whole thing. And I'm going to give you results. And you can choose how you want to give me that context. You can type it to me or audio it to me in Gemini. You can chat through it in a conversational style in SGE, which you can do not only in search, but also now in Google Maps. You can apply filter bubbles if you prefer to extend your search query that way. I will cater to that. You can do it through a click-based user journey. That's also fine. I have that available on all of my verticalized surfaces. You cannot use text at all. Give it to me as a visual search. Give it to me multimodal. Or don't give it to me at all. I will give it to you through content discovery platforms such as Google Discover. And Google is extremely good at learning what you want, particularly because they ask. They say, what brands do you like? What news platforms do you like? What are you interested in? And more users are telling them, this is what I want you to give me. And think about this. You probably use Chrome, Gmail, Calendar, Maps, the App Store, Google Home. I'm standing here in front of you today. I've got Fitbit on. It's tracking all of my personal health data. Google knows you intimately. And now they want to become your personal assistant. Gemini is being integrated into personal assistant with all of that knowledge of you, with all of that implicit context about you. And what we're seeing is that they're also integrating extensions based on their personalized surfaces. And these extensions can start to act as AI agents. So for example, if I want to go on a romantic weekend away, I want a hotel that's 5 stars, it's got a spa, it's got a restaurant, and it's within 4 kilometers of Berlin. Well then, I can just tell that to Gemini. It'll say, no problem. Here are hotels that meet that criteria. I click through to one. I get all of the offers from all of the different websites. And I can just say, I'm price conscious. I'm going to choose the cheapest. And then I'm right on the product detail page. And this can happen for any of Google's verticalized surfaces. We already have this for travel. I believe next we're getting this for shopping, because there is no reason why Google can't do this effectively well. It knows my styles. It knows my style preferences. It knows all of my history of shipping and returns and browsing. So when I ask it, hey, I want a new pair of jeans, it can imply all of that context that it has about me as an individual with my explicit prompt and produce me the very best set of jeans. And then I can purchase that with one click thanks to Google Shopping's inbuilt functionality. And Google is actively learning the things it needs to now. Look at its services. Look at what it's doing. It is proactively asking, hey, what styles do you like? What brands do you like? Are you price conscious? Let me show you some deals and see how you react to that. Actually, let me teach you to shop in a different way by prompting the type of product that you want and then doing a visual search on that image, and I will go find products that are similar to that. And this can be done on any verticalized surface. I could just ask Gemini, hey, I want to make a 6 p.m. booking at a restaurant nearby for 4 people. Find me a good one. Family-friendly restaurant. It can find me the most relevant job offers. It can find me the latest SEO news. It can craft me a dedicated fitness plan. And then using this fitness plan, it can say, hey, here are videos of the exercises you need to learn how to do, or here are inspirational articles when you're falling off the cliff, as we all always do. And it's not that all of this information doesn't exist. It's not that already I couldn't do this across Google's surface, but the difference here is the onus is taken off your shoulders and put on Gemini's shoulders. It's there to save you a significant amount of time. It makes all of the information that's available across Google surfaces more accessible and more actionable. And so this fundamentally changes our SEO strategy. For how long do you think the primary model of interaction is going to be typing little keyword shorthand into a tiny little box and then going through a list of 10 blue links, which, let's face it, were not really that satisfying in the first place? And this means that when your primary strategy is ranking category pages in SERPs for head match keywords, you have the same relationship security as a side chick. Because when you think about it, all you're doing is listing things with category pages. Google can list things itself. It can list things better than you. It prefers to list things by itself because it controls the user experience and it controls the results. It doesn't need you anymore. Google does not want to have a relationship with some thin content, single parametered site who wants to get in arguments with it about who has the better category navigation. It's looking for someone who can support it across all of its surfaces, who exhibits EEAT signals, who will really be there to provide deep content. It's looking for articles, it's looking for products, it's looking for videos that goes beyond what it already knows. And we see this user journey shifting away from category pages and towards this type of deep content on all of Google's vertical surfaces, whether that is shopping, whether that's news, whether that's travel, whether that's YouTube. It's already exclusively available for deep content. And we see that Google is essentially locking out brands. They want to be the surface where the user is doing their searching. So Google is acting as the category page, aggregating and displaying offers from multiple brands to either drop the user off right at the point of conversion or convert the user themselves on behalf of the brand. And this is also starting to happen in the SERPs. When we're looking at position zeros, again, there's no category pages here. This is all deep content, and deep content blocks are going more and more integrated into the SERP results. So the crux of it is this. The age of the category page is coming to an end. It is deep content that is the future for visibility across every single Google surface. So how do you optimize for that? Well, let's talk first about products. And it doesn't really matter if you're marketing your own unique individual product or you're marketing products that hundreds of other websites have. The key here is product enrichment. Because Google is going to be acting as this gatekeeper to conversion. You're not trying to convince the user to use your product. You'll first have to convince Google to allow you to convince the user to use your product. So you're actually marketing to the AI first. And now when we think about product detail pages in a traditional SEO sense, I'm going to make sure I have my keyword in the URL and the page title, and I might have some nice optimized images, and then I go to my SEO tool of choice and it says, job done, you're in the green, great. You're optimized from an SEO perspective, but you're really not. What have you actually told Google about this product? That it's a gym bag. Okay, why am I going to choose you? Think of this from Google's perspective. They've crawled over to this PDP's house, picked them up, taken them to a nice restaurant. They're talking to them, indexing all of that content. They're paying for this privilege because they're acting the gentleman. At the end of the date, they have no value. They were bored. You said nothing of interest. Now they crawl over to another house. They pick up another girl. And she's actually interesting. She's talking about all of this new stuff. She's engaging. She has an opinion. She's getting the second date. She's the one who's going to be given visibility. How do you become that girl? Well, you recognize that Google is not a search engine and hasn't been for years. Google is an AI company, and it requires more than traditional SEO. It requires you to actually describe the product that you're selling. But you don't want to talk too much on that first date, right? You have to make sure you're talking about interesting, relevant things for your target audience. How do you understand what's relevant? How do I know what to put on that product detail page and what not to? Well, Google tells you a lot of hints in its documentation. It says, tell me these things. I am interested in these topics. Specifically talk to me about this. So then you go through and you're like, good, I can do that. I'm going to put on the availability and the SKU and the free shipping and returns. I'm going to talk about brand and material and the condition. The problem is a lot of other sites are doing this as well. So now you're not boring, but you're also not that interesting. So we need to do more. What's next? Google tells you what people are interested in. They tell you in these filter bubbles. Okay, if it's a gym bag, I want it a compartmentalized gym bag. I want it for life, right? Really durable gym bag. Okay, great. They also tell you this with left-hand navigation filters in Google Shopping. Particularly if you put your VPN on and go to the States, you'll get much better results on these sorts of queries. It also tells you semantically relevant terms when you look at Google Autocomplete. So you get all of this information together and you say, okay, now I have a much better understanding of what Google's interested in talking about. Let me go and talk to it. Go and have a conversation in SGE. What filter bubbles does it come up with? What topics of conversation does it recommend you talk about? And then go and talk to it again in Gemini Chat, because it's going to have slightly different answers because you're in a different context. And now with all of that information, why has that stopped working? Now we're going to go and look at our competitor sites and best-in-class industry. And we're not doing that in order to copy them. We're doing that to understand what they are adding to the conversation, and what we plan to add to the conversation is more than what they say, to guarantee that we are going to be the most interesting date that Google has ever gone on in their life. And yes, you can look in Google Search Console, you can look in your Google Ads search terms, you can go and use your keyword tool of choice, and you can go and do your keyword research. There's nothing particularly wrong with that, as long as you have a very clear understanding that when you're looking at search volume, you are not looking at the potential of that search intent. That data doesn't exist there, because we're in a world beyond search. We're in a world of click-based journeys. We're in a world of queryless surfaces. So search volume cannot possibly communicate the amount of interest in a certain attribute of a product. So now we fleshed out our product detail page. We're really talking down into the features of what makes this one special. That's the content. You also need to add the context. To add the context, we can do that through internal linking. We can say, hey, here is this brand. Here are all of the other brands. Here are all the other products by that brand. You can say, hey, here's something that's a little bit more complex. You know, why do you want a waterproof multi-departmental bag? I don't go to the gym that often. I don't know. That's when you would link to an article really talking about why a compartmentalized gym bag is particularly useful. You give that additional context through the internal linking. This not only improves your user journey and obviously internal linking structure, this is also really going to help you with your topical authority of your brand. And I know many of you will be thinking, well, hey, this is just going to be taking me too much time. How am I going to do this with the time that I have? Well, I never said you had to do it. You can use AI to help you here. So if it's an existing product, then what you can do is go and get all of that merchant information and pre-populate the form. You can go and build a scraper, go and scrape all the other sites and what they say about this product. You can pre-populate the form. This is not going to be enough, because then you have to say, well, what do we have that's beyond what already exists? But this can fill in all of those basics. And then to go beyond it, again, you can use AI. Get the pictures of the products and put it into a GPT. And say to that GPT, extract all of these attributes that I want to apply on my product detail pages. And that can, again, fill in a lot of those basics. So then a human only has to fill in a few remaining attributes that are maybe touch-based or something that you can't see. This also works for user-generated content. Say you are a short-term rentals listing website. Do not make the user fill out a long, complicated form. What you can do is say to the user, go and do a walkthrough and talk to me about each of the rooms. Then you have a video. That's valuable in and of itself, because with that video, you can put it on the product detail page. You can use that for social media distribution. But what you can also use that for is extracting all of those attributes. You can extract really good visuals. You also have EXIF data, such as location. And when I know the location of the property, well, then I can add more context based on that location. I can have an API which tells me, well, what's the distance from the nearest public transport? I can say, what's the distance from the nearest schools? I can say, what is the neighborhood this is in? And produce all of my neighborhood guide style information. This is adding valuable context that's not reliant on anything except the address. You can also add valuable context through smart use of similar products, or through adding context through external content, such as user-generated content, or you can have your reviews from your like high authority media sites. You can link them in there. Obviously, user reviews are a no-brainer, making sure that you aggregate them and call out the pros and the cons. Why am I going to call out the cons? Because we learned earlier today that, what was it, 20 or 30% of products get returned? If you're trustworthy and upfront and say, this is who this product is for, this is who this product is not for, in a nice marketing way, then you're less likely to get those returns, and you're building trust with your audience. And when you're doing this sort of approach to your product detail pages, then it's not only going to be supporting conversion, this is also supporting you at every stage of the funnel, including evaluation, because now you have all of the parameters that you can put in a table versus somebody else and win, and also with awareness, because you've built up that really good topical authority, and you're more likely to be recommended when it comes to Gemini surfaces such as SGE. But please don't make Google work for it. Google is inherently lazy. So what you have to do is make sure that you are not playing hard to index. Give it to them on the server side in under 500 milliseconds with JavaScript disabled. And remember, Google doesn't like it dirty, so make sure it's nice, clean, semantic HTML code. That's going to get you quickly into the index. Also, please don't confuse Google. Don't make them guess. Think of images like sending emojis. They can be understood, but it's much better if you label them, because otherwise it can be a little bit awkward on some communications. So think of Gemini like a little toddler. It's really not that old. If a toddler walked into a room and they pointed at a bathtub and said bath, you would say, yes, bath. You would reconfirm that label to help that child learn. Well, LLMs are learning, and they're about the same age as a 2-year-old. So reconfirm the labels. The good thing is you don't have to do this through keyword stuffing, because you have all of these different elements. I can reconfirm that this property has a bath by putting a picture of a bath, having the label of a bath, having it described in the product description that there is a nice spa bath, and I can put that into the structured data. I have all of these different options, different elements to communicate the key attributes. And if you need a tool to tell you that Google has understood it, use Gemini's front end. So that way it can really understand, yes, I'm meeting all of these different attributes. And I can match to users' complex context-rich search query. So I'm leveraging that visual presentation in combination with the semantic data to make sure that I'm communicating exactly what Google wants to understand. Then I'm asking it, do you understand this product? And it's returning, yes, I know what this entity is. Here are the key attributes of this entity. And you can understand that it's understood this at scale by then going in and looking at your product sitemap. I hope you all have a dedicated product sitemap, not just a main XML sitemap. Go into the products one and look at your indexing. If today your indexing of your product sitemap is less than 90%, your relationship with Google is in trouble, girl. You got to address that. So we're going to make sure that we focus on quality data and clear communication to build up our relationship with Google across all of its surfaces. But product pages alone are not going to be enough. We need to ensure that we also establish topical authority. And the key way that people think about establishing topical authority is through article content. And as quite a few people, particularly Jono, have said before, hey, the way to do this is not research keywords and then review the existing pages and then write a similar thing in Frankenstein way with AI and put that on your website and think that's going to perform, because it's not. That is commodity content. That's not going to be getting you anywhere, because it'll produce things like definition guides, or you're going to do how-tos, or you're going to have the best tools of da-da-da, or you're going to have optimization checklists and, you know, these comparison showdown articles that nobody ever wanted. None of this commodity content is going to be getting you any play on modern surfaces, because Gemini has learned about all of these topics already, and it can better serve the user's search intent. Because if websites often go and they bury the lead, I don't want to have to scroll through a tale as long as time in order to learn how to cook white rice. I don't want to have to give you cookie tracking permission only because I've seen a headline from your website. And I certainly don't want to be playing kill the pop-up every single time I'm trying to scroll through an article. And now I don't have to, because Gemini provides me all of this commodity content with no interruptions and no hassle, and just nice, clear, here is the response. And yes, it can hallucinate. And yes, right now, not everybody trusts it. But the better it gets, and the more we check those citations, the more it confirms it knows what it's talking about, the more we will trust it. And it is very useful, and it is friction-free. And so it is a thing that I can actually do a multi-step journey. I can ask follow-up questions. I can move smoothly from an informational to a transactional intent. I cannot do that on an article on your website. And that means Gemini and Gemini surfaces are going to become the preference for exploring this type of commodity content. And if I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat and think conspiracy theorist, it's rather interesting that now that Gemini has these capabilities, Google's rolling out this algorithm update where they're saying we're going to be taking 40% of that sort of content out of the index. It just seems like they're reducing the competition. But even if you don't get caught by that cull, we know that Gartner's saying, well, 50% of search queries are going to go away anyway because Google's going to be satisfying those intents. They're not going to be coming as traffic to your website from traditional search. And then we've got Google telling us, well, we actually judge you on a domain level. Everything in the index impacts your ability to rank your content. That time is weird. Do I have 9 minutes left or no minutes left? We don't know. They're figuring it out. That's also broken. The core here is that your past behavior on what you've published on your website and what is in the index can impact your relationship with Google moving forward. So it's not that you need to fear that your article content, that's all this commodity content, is no longer going to get traffic. That's guaranteed at this point. What you need to fear is that low quality content is going to pull down the performance of your existing commercial content. So your product detail pages will not get the play that they deserve because you've got all of this crappy article content over in a blog that was written back in 2015 and no one's looked at it since. But the problem is you actually do need a proper content strategy. Content is absolutely essential for brand awareness, for brand preference, and to support users through the conversion funnel. So how do you do a content strategy, especially in the Gemini era? Well, we know the answer, right? Write quality content. What does that mean? Quality content can be defined as content that adds information gain. It adds something new to Google's corpus of information. Whether that's a new opinion, whether that's a new fact, whether that's a new entity, just add something new to the conversation. And when you do this and you build your topical authority, it's going to allow you to start getting play on surfaces like Discover and like News and like related insights placements. And this is something that you can only achieve if you stop focusing on keywords and start focusing on entities, because these are queryless surfaces. So you shouldn't be writing things like how to write a resume. That's commodity content. Google has the answer. They do not need you. They will not show you. What Google cannot answer is, why is AI rejecting your resume? All of these titles are not optimized from a traditional SEO perspective. They do not optimize for keywords. Every single one got hundreds of thousands of visits to the websites because they focused on writing something interesting about the topic. That is what matters. And that's going to get you topical authority. And when I talk about topical authority and paying attention to everything you have in the index, I'm not only talking about everything that's in Google Search Console. That is not the index of Google for your brand. That is the index of your website. Your brand is tied to your topical authority. That means it encompasses all of the assets that Google associates to your brand entity, along with your website, also your YouTube channel, and your social media pages, and any other offsite or digital asset. So when we think about we have to improve the quality of information in the index for our brand, yes, it's your articles, but it's also your YouTube videos, both vertical and short form videos. It is your TikToks. It is anything you have in terms of visual stories or posts on Twitter. I will not call it X. Or if you're looking at your YouTube community posts, all of these things contribute topical authority and have a different level of commitment to making them versus articles. So if you're saying, hey, we do not have time to go off and do really good articles. We do not have time to make videos. No problem. How about you just do decent social media posts? Can we set that as a base bar, please? Because I think we can all achieve that. Have an opinion, have something to say, test it on social media, see how your audience reacts. Because that is how we can start learning about what our audience is actually interested in, start writing actually engaging content. That content is going to start supporting you to establish topical authority, and that is not only going to allow you to get more articles and more videos across Google surfaces, but this is also, when you do it really well, what will allow your products to start getting across all Google surfaces, including Google Discover. So now you're in a situation where before a user searches for your competitor's product, maybe even before the user knows that they want to look for your product, you are being proactively shown front and center on the Google homepage. Now that is a competitive advantage. That is something that your competitors will not easily be able to mimic. That is what an entity-enhancing, authority-building, deep content strategy does for your brands. Thank you.